Marvel's latest TV show Echo is streaming now. All 5 episodes are out and let's talk about it. So it was under Marvel Spotlight banner, and if you don't know, let me tell you, Marvel Spotlight is a new banner by Marvel in which we will follow individual character stories which doesn't do a lot in the grand scheme of things in consideration of the MCU. So basically any show that comes under the banner of Marvel Spotlight, it won't be as humongous as the other MCU projects, but will definitely follow a largely grounded and a character story. Now, understanding Echo is the first show under the Spotlight banner is very important because this show definitely feels like a very grounded show and you can't expect those big MCU elevation scenes in this show either. So yeah, knowing this is important to alter your expectations beforehand watching this series. So I've divided this video into two different parts. Firstly, I'll share my thoughts on this show without giving any spoilers, and in the later half of this video we'll discuss the spoiler section. Let's start with the non-spoiler section. So the story of Echo and Maya Lopez is really a very grounded one, and it does entirely focus on Maya Lopez. As we all know, Maya Lopez is a deaf Native American woman who has a prosthetic leg, and we last saw her in the Hawkeye show where she shoots Kingpin in the face. So the story picks up right after that, and now Maya has gone back to her hometown in Oklahoma to her Native American roots. Now what I'm about to explain is pretty important to understand. So the series revolves around three major things. First is Maya's coming to terms with her past, her ancestral past. By the way, this storyline was perhaps the best storyline from this entire series. Second thing was her relationship with Kingpin, and it goes all the way back when she was just a kid, then when she did killings for Kingpin, and now her latest history with Kingpin when she shot him in the face. And the third thing this series revolves around is how Maya reconnects with her family, her roots and her identity in a very grounded way. Now whenever the story was focused on Maya and her roots, it was good. It was engaging, it was pretty interesting to watch, but still the episodes were kind of short and it does feel like something's missing, probably 30-40 minutes, or rather an episode is missing. And the whole Kingpin angle was also alright, but not that big. And as I mentioned above, that understanding that this show is the first show in the Marvel Spotlight banner and it will have a very grounded approach, and this clearly establishes that, because after watching the series you will feel, okay, I just saw a story of Maya Lopez, but it didn't have huge consequences and all, but it was just her story. It was just she getting back to her roots and just making sense of things in her own different way. And it is all that you get from this series of Echo. Now coming to the fighting scenes, first of all, this show was heavily marketed for the brutal action scenes, and that's why it was rated TVMA as well. But does that expectations hold up? I'd say yes and no as well. There aren't too many big fight scenes, but the main ones are good. The one in particular with a certain cameo character was very short, but the action choreography was, considering it was a one-take shot, was pretty good. Now one-take shots are, very difficult to choreograph, and it's a challenging process for the actors and the cinematographers as well, but that main sequence was nice. Now one more thing that I'd like to add in this, that there were a few scenes in which we were looking from Maya's perspective, and she is deaf, and so the audience also had no sound in the entire scene. The scenes were actually mute. This was a very good touch that they had in there, and it makes us feel like we are in Maya's shoes. To be honest, I was expecting a few scenes like this where we as an audience were shown how it is to be in Maya Lopez's shoes with the hearing issues and all, so that was a pretty good touch. To give my final non-spoiler thoughts, as I mentioned at the start of this video, the project under the Spotlight banner would be more grounded and follow the characters from a more human perspective, a more human level, and this show does achieve that. The whole Maya ancestral storyline was pretty good. It does falter slightly with the Kingpin storyline, but it isn't a glaring issue, and if anything, Kingpin's inclusion does lays down the groundwork for the next Daredevil show. Now I'd like to give a special mention to Cox's acting. She was good as well. Alright then, let's talk about some spoilers, so this is your spoiler warning. I'd first like to start with Daredevil, obviously. Daredevil's cameo was just added to make the buzz and sort of re-establish his presence in the MCU, and also the point in which exactly he was introduced signifies the time in the past where these characters crossed paths. Like Echo and Daredevil, they definitely crossed paths, and the reason is pretty simple, because Daredevil's nemesis is Kingpin, and since Maya is Kingpin's adopted daughter, it does make sense that they should have crossed paths earlier in the day. And this scene obviously was just added to show that yeah, at some point in the past they locked horns with each other. And now given the fact that Netflix's Daredevil show is canon to the MCU, it does really makes an interesting viewpoint to see whether they acknowledge their respective parts which we saw in the previous Daredevil series in the upcoming Daredevil Born Again series. Now I want to talk about Kingpin's inclusion in this series. Now we all know for a fact that he struggles with relationship. He does indeed struggle with Maya as well in this series as his adopted daughter. His storyline made sense in the story, but as I mentioned above, the ancestral story was more interesting than the Kingpin angle. But yeah, we got the whole Daredevil street level kind of vibes with Kingpin, so it was a good fun to watch something different than what we get in the MCU. And yeah, this goes without saying that this show under the Spotlight banner literally had no jokes, and this is very different from the MCU movies or TV shows that we see. Plenty of jokes, sometimes forced jokes as well, but not anymore, no, at least not in the Spotlight banner. Alright then, so these were my thoughts about Echo. Please go down in the comment section and share your thoughts if you have already seen this series, and I'll be coming up with more videos on Echo in the upcoming few days. So subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you so much for watching.